darling viewers, yes, I'm back. If you've been following me on Twitter, you know that I've been out of the country. I've been in Hong Kong, I've been in Australia, I've had a wonderful time. Look at the tan, I look fantastic as far as I'm concerned. I have missed you all, but I come with some interesting ideas. Before I introduce today's guest on this episode, I want to just talk about my travels, because I went to Australia. My mother got married, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. So when I decided to go out and visit Australia, I went via Hong Kong, and I love to travel. I mean, I really, really love to travel. It's my favourite thing to do. But one of the things that I love about travelling is not only exploring different cultures and different foods and different ways of living, different ideas to life. It also makes me think about how certain cities are doing certain projects, and are there any ideas that's happening in another part of the world that we can bring back to Hamilton? Are there ideas, are there concepts that's working somewhere else that we can introduce here in Hamilton? I mean, why reinvent the wheel? One of the things that really impressed me, I was in Melbourne in Australia, and it's summer there, it was winter here, it was summer there. It was kind of an odd experience. But I'm also a lover of coffee, and Melbourne is the #1 coffee culture, apparently, according to TripAdvisor, that it's the place to be if you're a coffee lover. So I go out and explore coffee shops. And I was at this one place, and sitting on the sidewalk pavement thing, had my coffee. It's about 9:30 in the morning, and there's people bustling. And I look on the floor. We've got an image to show you. This is what I'm talking about. I looked down on the floor and I saw this stud, this metal stud. It says footpath dining, City of Melbourne boundary. And they were in a kind of semicircle shape on the sidewalk, but built into the sidewalk. And I thought, what are they? So I asked the manager of the shop. I said, what's this supposed to be? And she was telling me that when a service such as a coffee shop or a bar apply to the city for a licence to have outdoor dining, the city, once they agree it, they come along and they build into the sidewalk these studs. So they can't be moved, but they're obviously not permanent. So if the licence is revoked, then they take them away. And the point of it is that it's meant to designate what is the property of the coffee shop, for example. So where can the coffee shop lay out their tables, and where can their diners sit? It's also designates legal stuff, and, you know, if somebody trips over, then whose fault it is, where the garbage goes, or the rubbish as I call it. It just was a really, really interesting idea. And yes, it sounds a bit simplistic, and you're probably thinking, why is Daniel telling us about this thing? I wanted to tell you because I did send a copy of this to some of our city councillors. The point of this is that when we travel, when we go outside of the city walls, I do believe that the only way that we can progress and advance as a city is to really think outside of the box and to look at what's happening elsewhere in the GTA, in the province, in the country, across the globe, and bring those ideas back. And that's also the concept of coming to Hamilton. It's not just about people coming to Hamilton. It's about ideas, concepts, philosophies, approaches to governance. And it just really inspired me as a way of kind of doing something that perhaps it could be of great benefit to our city and to the small businesses, particularly those in hospitality. So if you think it's a good idea, let me know on the Twitter. Those of you that have been following me on the Twitter will see my journey, and you'll see some pictures of my mother when she got married. It was a great trip, but I'm thrilled to be back. I'm really, really happy to be back. There's nothing better than landing at Pearson Airport and knowing that you're back home. So, yeah, it was a great trip, and lots of great ideas, and I'm just brimming with them, and it's a pleasure to have this opportunity to tell you. Now, let's talk about today's show. This is the last episode of the current series. What do they call it here in Canada? Season. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute, but one of the people I've been really looking forward to introducing is Dr. Sarah Wayland, fellow PhD. We met, I can't remember how long we met. It was a couple of years ago, I think. We got into, someone recommended that I contact you, and we met for coffee, and
been following each other ever since.
We have, and we bump into each other at events and things. So I'm really thrilled that you agreed to my invitation to be here.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Yeah. So the burning question is, where are you from and what brought you to Hamilton?
Well, I'm from that class of immigrant that largely is thought of as an invisible immigrant, I guess. I'm coming from the United States to Canada. And I was thinking about this before coming here today, that I think I've lived the first half of my life in the United States. So my growing up years, my schooling year, all my schooling years, my PhD. And then the second half of my life, my married life, motherhood, career in Canada.
So what brought you to Hamilton?
Well, first when I came to Canada, I came to Canada for the same reason that a lot of Americans come to Canada. It's because of love. And I met my husband when I was a student at the University of Maryland. He came down there to do a master's degree in history, and I was doing a PhD in political science. And we started dating, didn't know where that was going to go. And then he moved back to Canada to go to law school in Toronto. So eventually I decided he was worth it, and I ended up coming here. We got engaged, and we lived in Toronto at first. And then we moved to St. Catharines. I had a teaching job at Brock University for a couple of years. So we were living in St. Catharines. And then Hamilton is kind of not only literally in between those two cities, but it was kind of in between those two places in terms of size, in terms of opportunities, in terms of, interest, things to do. We found Toronto was just kind of too big, and it was a hassle to do a lot of things. But living in Hamilton, we're close to Toronto if we want to go there. But Hamilton is a nice size because,
it is.
You've run into people,
You do. I mean, you have to leave Hamilton to get away from people that you know in Hamilton, and then you bump into them in other places.
Yeah. Like when we first lived here, it was like a real moment for me when I would go grocery shopping on the weekends or something, and I would start to run into people I knew, and it would be very exciting. I felt like this is my community, my neighbors. It was a good social interaction. And now sometimes I think, I don't have time to go grocery shopping. I got to go a different time because I'm going to run into too many people.
I know. Sometimes, well, I mean, I can only relate coming from London, where if you see somebody twice, it's meant to be. You're meant to see them. There's something at play. One of the things I do want to talk about is, as an American citizen from the United States, American citizens aren't necessarily thought about as immigrants in the same way that perhaps I'm considered, maybe I'm not considered an immigrant. But I do want to touch on this because what was the process, the visa process, to come to Canada as an American citizen?
Well, Americans are just like citizens from any other country. There's no kind of special agreement between Canada and the United States. So we would come here just under the same immigration streams as international students or family class or economic immigrants, just like anyone else, except for, I guess there's a small category of people who come under NAFTA. Like there's some free trade kind of regulations, but I came in the family class. I was sponsored by my then fiance. So I came as a family class immigrant, even though I might have been able to apply in other categories as well. So Americans, I do know that in Hamilton, last time I looked at the figures, like we don't really have a lot of recent figures, but Americans are in the top 5 in terms of immigrants living in Hamilton. So you wouldn't know it probably to look.
You wouldn't know, but it's interesting because, I mean, obviously, the longest land border on the globe between the US and Canada, and perhaps there is an assumption that Americans and Canadians can come free, because Canadians to emigrate to America have to go through a same system as a British citizen or an Australian citizen, whatever. You mentioned figures, you mentioned statistics. You are quite known about knowing facts and figures for the city of Hamilton. So let's talk about the work that you do.
Okay. Sure. So the work I do for the city of Hamilton kind of came out of previous research and writing projects that I worked on for a period of 10 years or so. And I still do some research and writing projects.
We have some.
So I was doing work in immigration and different social issues, and I started thinking, I write these reports and I write these recommendations, but whatever happens to this stuff? So the person Judy Travis from the Workforce Planning Hamilton, and I decided to go and speak to Hamilton City Council to get our 5 minutes of time in front of council to say, this is an issue we think is important. And we were talking about immigrant entrepreneurship and the fact that immigrants in Canada are more likely to own a business than the Canadian-born population. But they often face a number of barriers in terms of regulations, just not understanding like the landscape because it's so different from where they came from. And so we decided to get that 5 minutes in front of council, and the councillors were very interested in this, and they really, after that, Chris Murray, the city manager, invited me to come work for the city on a part-time basis to write an immigrant attraction plan. So to think about how Hamilton could be more proactive in terms of attracting economic class immigrants, immigrant entrepreneurs, supporting our immigrant business owners. We have a lot of international students in Hamilton. Many of them want to stay in Canada after graduation, but you know, do they stay in Hamilton? We don't really know, but anecdotally it seems like not a lot of them do.
These are some of the reports that you published with the City of Hamilton, or for the City? With the City of Hamilton.
Yeah, as part of the city.
And these are available through the city. What I think is wonderful is that somebody who is leading the research about immigrants coming to Hamilton is an immigrant herself. Do you think that that adds some sort of intellectual value to the work that you're doing because you are also the statistic that you're writing about?
Well, I hope so. I certainly am really passionate about the topic. I was already working in this field, and in some ways this is my dream job because they created a job for me to get to implement problems and issues that I'm concerned about. So that's great. I am a bit more privileged than some immigrants in the sense that English is my native language. For most immigrants to Canada, they're mostly fluent in English or proficient. But, you know, English can be, as you know, a challenge, and English varies from country to country, too.
I have a great challenge with English. It's terrible. Nobody understands what I'm saying. I mean, I would say that as someone who attained a PhD as well, I understand the value of the doctorate. I also attained my PhD from the United States, so I understand I was at a university in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I take great comfort that, for me personally, that someone who attained a PhD outside of Canada has been able to apply those skills within the governance of the City of Hamilton. I think we'd like to see a bit more of it.
Well, there are issues with foreign credential recognition, for sure. And when I moved to Canada, it was very hard to get a job teaching university, which is what I always thought that I would do. So I did have some contract positions for a while, but then I ultimately decided, time to try to do something.
Well, we're very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
I think we're very, very lucky to have you. And I've really enjoyed getting to know you and collaborating on some of your ideas, and you being part of the show. It really means a lot to me, Sarah. It really does.
Well, I'm happy to be here, and really happy that you have a show about coming to Hamilton.
Yes. We're going to get Series 3 as well, Season 3, whatever we call it here. And
Season 3.
Season 3. It's like the American Netflix. I don't understand. But thank you so much, Dr. Whalen, for being here. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Stay with us. We're going to talk to somebody who came from India and find out what he's doing. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Watching you.
Wondering how the latest decisions at City Hall, the school boards, Queen's Park, and elsewhere are going to affect your life? We cover all of these on City Matters, your current affairs show right here on Cable 14.
We've been asking for that kind of relationship for years.
Tune in at noon, 4, 6, or 10 p.m. and look for engaging local discussion that will inform and explain.
You got to be a team to move this city forward.
That's City Matters, only on Cable 14 and cable14now.com.
It's a rape whistle.
The Canadian Women's Foundation, moving women and girls out of abuse and poverty and into confidence.
Welcome back, viewers. Did you miss me? I'd only been gone a couple of seconds. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about high-skilled professional workers coming to Canada. Because when I applied for permanent residency originally in 2008, and it took 4 years, once I was approved permanent residency, I had a nice little letter from the High Commission of Canada in London inviting me to a Welcome to Canada orientation. And it was a half-day workshop, and basically, in that, I could talk about this for hours, but basically it was a workshop that just described the idea and the fact, from Canada's perspective, that Canada was in desperate need of skills-based workers, and if you go to these areas with all your credentials and accreditation and qualifications and experiences and references and blah, 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 you will get a job. Not entirely sure that's true, and there are many factors as to why, but somebody who has been equally affected by this, coming to Canada as a skilled worker, is my next guest. Hareen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Daniel.
First time at Cable 14 Studios.
Absolutely.
You've dived into the deep end, my friend.
Well, I'm trying. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
I really appreciate this. So, where are you from? When did you come to Canada, and why Hamilton?
I moved to Canada in 2011, August 2011. I came here as a student. At Mohawk College, and was through our Mohawk's international partners, actually. When I was back in India, I was looking at opportunities in Canada with all the things that you just mentioned about Canada looking for skilled workers. So it was more about exploring options, and at that time I was being suggested that Mohawk College, Hamilton, might be a great idea. Although I started in Brantford in the satellite campus, it was eventually meant to be in Hamilton. I think that was destiny.
And here you are.
Brought me here, absolutely.
Here
it's been
you
a pleasure.
are. So you've been a student at Mohawk College, and what did you graduate from there?
Right. So before moving to Canada, I had a bachelor's in physical therapy, and once I graduated in 2011 is when I moved here for my education in health, wellness, and fitness, and it had an option with co-op. So I was really fortunate to work at different, top employers of our Greater Hamilton area in St. Joe's, Dofasco, Mohawk College, YMCA. So it was really, really.
And you volunteered a lot of your time.
I have. I've always volunteered. Even back in India, I used to, carry on drives with my university. Working within the healthcare, working with the poor people, actually, blood donation drives, camps, and just going out within the community and giving back and helping out. So I continued that when I moved to Canada, and it was difficult to find work, of course. I mean, it's difficult, it's challenging. New country, new location, new people, new language. Although English was my first language, but still, it's different. As you know, I mean, with the accent and everything, I mean, it may be perceived sometimes, it may not. But it has been.
I don't have an accent.
We've never talked about that, no.
It's never come up. I don't know what people are talking about. So, make me laugh. So, you're on a visa that expires. When does it expire?
I'm on my work visa, and it expires in June.
June of this year?
June of this year,
So we've got, from the date, this airs in April, so we've got a couple of months.
Yeah.
So, this is time sensitive. I think that's fair to say. I mean, let's just say it as it is. What do you need? I'm assuming that you want to stay, otherwise you wouldn't be on a show called Coming to Hamilton.
Absolutely. And I want to live in Hamilton.
Yeah. What do you need in order to have that visa extended where you can then apply for permanent residency?
Funny you mentioned earlier about the invitation to apply for the orientation when you were back in London. So it's similar. Because I came in as a student and I did not apply as a resident, it was a different path, but similar result. And right now I have the invitation to apply. And I have all the check marks being crossed off, but one thing.
But one.
Yes,
What's the one?
And that's employment.
That's
full-time employment, yes.
What do you offer to an employer? So if an employer is watching now, what do you offer? I mean, what is it that you're looking for? What can you do? Talk to the camera.
It's all about transferable skills. With my background in healthcare and having worked in hospitals, having worked within the community centers back in India, I have the advantage. I would say that. I mean, yeah, I do have an advantage that way, having been worked as a physiotherapist, physical therapist in India, and coming here, having worked with all these top employers, having that Canadian experience that was so important, and along with that, volunteering my time, giving back to the community, you know, all those things.
Yeah, because we met, if I'm wrong, I'm sure of it.
You meet a lot of people.
I may be wrong though. As far as I'm concerned, I'm right. I mean, we met when you were volunteering. I'm slouching down this chair. We met when you were volunteering, and then I saw you again, and you were volunteering for somewhere else. And I think that newcomers to Canada volunteer. I did it. You do everything, and it sometimes can appear that one is incredibly scatty.
Right.
I don't know if that word you know what that word scatty means, but it means you're just all over the place.
Right.
And you may have fallen into that trap as I did. You know, I certainly did. But you do offer a lot of great transferable skills. And it really is about looking for employment. We're going to put your contact details, the Twitter, on this show, on the screen. What I would say to anybody out in the community is you can find Harry. He was profiled in the spec. If you Google his name, the spec profile thing comes up. I've tried it. It does work. You can go through the Cable 14 website to my page. I'll happily email connect you with Harry if you want to. I mean, you know, this is all about connecting each other and making something work. I mean, I would love to see you stay, and I know that you work incredibly hard.
I try.
You do try.
Best. Yes.
And doing something like this, I mean, we make it look easy. Everyone says, like, you make it look easy, Daniel, but it is difficult, and it takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of gumption to sit on this sofa in front of... There are 3 cameras here, by the way, so it's very difficult to do this, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Let's do everything we can to keep you around.
Thank you. I would love to stick around, and I would love to continue my journey in Hamilton, and it has been a great city. Alexander Graham Bell said that Brantford became my thinking place. I can say that Brantford became my thinking place, and Hamilton is where it became more of my working place. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Appreciate it. That's a nice way to end. This is the last episode of the current season. I will be back in the fall because there's just so many wonderful people to talk about and so many important issues that we have to talk about. You're the first to hear this. I will be departing for a couple of months. I will be leaving Canada for a couple of months to accept an opportunity to work for the government of Kuwait. I have been appointed the role to advise the Minister of Youth, the new Minister of Youth, for a new department that the government of Kuwait have created. It extends from some work that I did with the United Nations a few years ago. It's been a very difficult decision for me to make, to leave Canada and to go and work. I need money. But it's an opportunity that kind of comes from work that I did some years ago, and life is a circle, as I say. I will be back. I really love Hamilton. I really love being here. This is something that I feel that I need to do. But there's also another topic that I want to raise, and that is that, you know, we've got people that really want to stay, myself included. We've got to do something about creating more job opportunities. We can't be reliant, oh, that sound very direct there. We can't be reliant on entrepreneurialism alone. It's not for everybody. And there are factors as to some people why, you know, they can't do that. So we need to start thinking a little bit more progressively in that sense of how do we create opportunities. I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's a discussion that certainly we can have. What's your thoughts on it? I mean, what do you think the community can do to broaden the access to employability?
It's not just about creating jobs. It's more about you know, reaching out within the community and giving those opportunities to newcomers, to international students. And I think that's what we showcase with our Global Hamilton Connect, which is a non-for-profit organization, volunteering run. And I'm one of the founding members, along with our advisor, Sarah, who was here earlier.
Yeah,
and
Kasim was on a few weeks ago.
Yes, absolutely, Alyssa as well. So all these like-minded individuals coming together for a greater cause, which is about finding employment and keeping your best students, international students, newcomers in the city. You were talking about earlier how you need to move outside of the box, and when you go out, you bring in more opportunities, you bring in more ideas, and it's just about that, having those. We already have those ideas here in Hamilton. It's just about keeping them. Exactly.
That's a way to end. You've done my ending, but I appreciate this. This has been a show where I think we've covered a lot of topics, but ultimately the concept of coming to Hamilton and the opportunity Cable 14 has given me is to say, we're here, we want to stay, and we're not going anywhere. I'll talk to you all very, very soon. Follow me on the Twitter, as far as I'm concerned.